So if I could ask people moving in to find a seat, please. Before I start, I thought I'd show this device I'm holding. It's a cell phone, and this is the little button that causes it not to ring. If you have one of those, you might think about pushing that little button. It's my pleasure today to welcome President Kaler for the State of the University address and to welcome all of you in attendance. Eric W. Kaler became the 16th president of the University of Minnesota on July 1st, 2011. He's only the second alumnus to rise to the university's presidency, having received his PhD from the university's Department of Chemical Engineering and Materials Science in 1982. In his early academic career, President Kaler became one of the nation's foremost experts on complex fluids, which are used in many applications, including drug delivery, the biotech industry, food processing, and manufacturing of coatings and paints. In recognition of his signal contributions to his field, President Kaler was elected to the National Academy of Engineering in 2010. He's a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the American Chemical Society. It's very close to my heart. I'm a professor of chemistry. And just this year, the Neutron Scattering Society of America. That is a small society, but a very proud one. And to name one additional achievement hot off the presses, President Kaler has been named to the U.S. Homeland Security Academic Advisory Council by Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano. I'm a little annoyed about that new policy where I have to take my shoes off each time before I go into a classroom, but oh well. Immediately before coming to the U, Kaler served as provost and senior vice president for academic affairs at Stony Brook University in the State University of New York system. He also was Stony Brook's vice president for Brookhaven National Laboratory Affairs. Prior to that, he was dean of the University of Delaware's College of Engineering. And so, President Kaler, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, and good afternoon. I really am tempted to lecture on neutron scattering. It is a fascinating field of broad interest and impact, but I've decided not to. So today, I want to talk to you about balances. And not only the balances in our books or in our labs, but also the balances we strike for this university as we move forward in a challenging time. About public support, balancing the tuition support provided by students and their families. About training for a job, balancing being educated for a life of learning. About balancing our research mission and our educational goals. And about balancing our rich heritage and tradition with the need to respond in new ways to global challenges. About balancing the future we desire with the need of paying for it now. And about balancing our commitment to Minnesota with our responsibility to the world. And perhaps, most importantly, about the balance of risk and reward. I chose this theme after 8 months of crossing the state and our campuses, and after meeting and listening to hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And of course, among those stakeholders, chief among those stakeholders I've met, listened to, and learned from are you, our exceptional faculty, our tireless staff, and our inspiring students of this great university. One of my favorite regular outings each week is to visit a department on the Twin Cities campus and to see all of the great work being done, from the labs in the AHC to the design studios in St. Paul. Each one of those visits informs me about the enormous impact we have on students and on the public. Another one of my favorite events is a lunch I have nearly every week with a different group of faculty. And the depth and breadth of what you do is astonishing. And I'm proud to be your colleague. Since last July, some of my most exhilarating days have been on visits to our statewide campuses, coming to understand the special and distinct work conducted there. I've seen and heard of the life-changing research you do, the energized teaching you offer, and I've come to know the spectacular promise of our students. They are why we are here. Wherever I go, I tell stories about our dance and physics students, our ag and PhD students, stories that confirm how great an institution of higher education we are all together. Now, of course, the pushes and pulls on our great institution are many. But I have found that most Minnesotans love their university and they want it to do well. Still, our role as a public land-grant research university is not clear to many. Many do support our drive to excellence, but not if it means their student can't get into the U. Many value what we provide to our rural towns and agricultural economy in greater Minnesota, but feel we should do more. Many understand that higher education is the broadest and best paved road we have to a prosperous life, but frankly, aren't sure we're a good value. Those and other balances reflect where we are today. They are the consequences of past decisions. But to me, they represent the initial conditions on which we will build our future together. What we do from now on, mostly, is up to us. Board of Regents Chair Cohen, Chair Cohen, Regents Beeson, Broad, Hung, McMillan, Ramirez, and Simmons. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. We have elected representatives here with us, the Mayor of St. Paul, Chris Coleman, my mayor, Larry Poggemiller, Commissioner of Higher Education, Chuck Uyghur, State Senator, and Ardell Breedy, the Mayor of Rochester. And please excuse me if I have missed anyone. The danger of reading names is large. But thank you so much for coming and for your years of support of higher education and your dedicated work for our university. Thank you. To each of you listening from our campuses in Crookston, Duluth, Morris, and Rochester, and online, thank you also for joining us today. I want to first acknowledge and officially welcome some new members of my team. We have recruited Provost Karen Hansen from another Big Ten institution, and she is a philosopher who balances the natural leanings of a chemical engineer. We have a new Chief Information Officer, Scott Studham, a new government relations leader in Jason Roloff, and a new Chief Communications Officer in Diana Harvey. By my first anniversary, I expect we will also have new leadership on our Crookston campus, in our Office of Equity and Diversity, and for University Services, the Carlson School and the School of Dentistry, and for intercollegiate athletics on the Twin Cities campus. As an aside, you might know that Gopher Athletics has been in the news lately. And let me just say, I am as committed to its competitive success and sure of its value to our state as anybody else. But that success, as in all we do, must be balanced with integrity. Now, in all of this new blood of leadership means we have to strike the balance of saying goodbye to friends, co-workers, and leaders. So please join me in thanking Chancellor Chuck Casey, Joel Maturi, Kathleen O'Brien, Donna Peterson, and Tom Sullivan for their combined 97 years of service. Thank you. And I understand that Kathleen O'Brien actually conceptualized the first State of the University speech a few years ago. I frequently say that my goal for this university is for us to be in the conversation about the great American public universities, Berkeley and Michigan, Virginia and UCLA, and others. We are fortunate that in many areas our achievements far, far exceed our reputation, perhaps a reflection of Minnesotans' reluctance to brag. I do like to tell people that if Texans lived here, this would be the land of 30,000 lakes. We're the only state in the nation that rounds down. But thankfully, we are Minnesota, where our statewide campuses offer tremendous opportunities for liberal education, sustainability studies, new ways of learning in the health sciences, and innovation in e- and distance learning. This is where our campuses address critical issues facing the state, such as the future of the mining industry and the health of our Great Lakes. But advancing what we do on all our campuses and changing how we are known require us to focus our resources and develop new ways of teaching and new ways of learning, new avenues of research, and new kinds of public engagement. And I do want to emphasize new ways. Let me describe some of those new directions by reminding you of one of the first things I did as president. Last summer, following the government shutdown and the special session, the university received an additional $25 million, and I had to decide how to allocate it. That money went largely into 4 areas. First, we allocated $4.1 million for undergraduate aid to reduce tuition for in-state students this semester, and we reduced the planned tuition increase for fall 2012 from 5% to 3.5% for Minnesota residents. That rate of increase is the lowest rate of increase this century and the second smallest dollar amount this century. Second, we allocated funds to critical needs in the current year, primarily to offset large cuts in medical education funding and to hire additional faculty. Third, we were prudent. We reserved some funds in case our economic situation worsened in fiscal year 2013. And fourth, we allocated funds to support 150 doctoral dissertation fellowships per year for 3 years, a 40% increase over previous years. These fellowships are competitively awarded, and they allow our best students to finish their graduate studies in a timely way. So what does such a fellowship do? Let me give you just one example. A fellowship allowed Candace Dorr-Stevens, a PhD student in our College of Education and Human Development, to devote herself full-time to an innovative project analyzing how high school students use digital media to learn. If not for her $22,500 fellowship and the tuition and healthcare benefits we provide our graduate students, Candace, a mother of 2, would have needed another year to complete her dissertation. She says the fellowship allowed her to be in the trenches with teachers and students. It allowed her, she says, to walk through an intellectual garden, unencumbered with other responsibilities. Fellowships like this are a critical and effective way we invest in the next generation of scholars, teachers, and citizens who will mold the future. Candace, as a representative of the value of doctoral education at the University of Minnesota, would you please stand so we can acknowledge you? Thank you. And the 2 are 3 and 6 years old, which is an additional degree of difficulty. Now, many of people think the best way to understand where an institution is headed is to look at its strategic plan. I say, look at the budget. And if you look at those budget decisions from last summer, you will see my goals for this institution clearly reflected. Holding the line on tuition increases to keep the university affordable, rebuilding our excellent faculty, investing in bold scholarship, and maintaining a prudent budget structure. I think that's a pretty robust framework. Our budget for fiscal 2013 is still taking shape, but I want to tell you some of the noteworthy features that are a window also on my priorities and as an outline of what I will recommend to the Board of Regents in May. First, the increase in cost pools is 0%. 0. Our budget is built using the idea of cost pools, which pay for services, shared central services and administration. And except for salary raises and tuition aid, in my budget, the increase in the cost pools is 0. We're not increasing administration. I pledge to hold the line on administrative costs, and this budget does that. Second, we have budgeted a 2.5% compensation increase for all employees. This follows 3 years of salary freezes or modest increases and furloughs and an increased burden of healthcare costs. This rewards all of you who have carried us through some very difficult budgets. And so I say to our staff and our faculty, thank you. Thank you for your hard work and your sacrifices. And thank you for understanding the effects that state cutbacks have had on our operations. Thank you for all that you do. Third, in our 2013 budget plan, there is a pool of about $21 million for academic investments. This substantial pool of money will be awarded competitively through the annual compact budget process. I encourage your ideas, your best ideas, and those of your deans and your chancellors to compete for those dollars. I believe this budget positions us well to move forward in exciting and productive ways and reflects a prudent balance. To be clear, the state budget continues to be strained, and this may affect our support in the future. But we cannot afford to put our aspirations on hold indefinitely. We will move forward, making responsible hires and rewarding our people now. Let me now turn to tuition and student and family debt, critical issues that are directly tied to state support. Simply put, as the state of Minnesota's investment in the university has declined, our need for tuition dollars to replace part of that state support has increased. We're working every day to tell our story. I've testified 6 times at the Capitol in the past month. I have met face-to-face with nearly 100 of our 201 state legislators, and we are activating our 21,000-person strong grassroots network. But the fantasy that somehow the university could advance its mission and hold the line on tuition as state support dwindles is just that, a fantasy we can't do. For students and families of limited means, tuition increases can drive a painful increase in student debt. About 1/3 of our undergraduate students graduate debt-free, but the average debt of the other 2/3 of undergraduates across our system exceeds $27,000. If you graduate and quickly get a job earning $40,000 or $50,000, that debt level of $300 a month may be manageable, but it can be a real challenge under many other circumstances. For example, if your debt causes you to drop out or extend your time to graduate, or if you simply can't find a job after graduation, those are serious challenges and can cause you to question the value of your education. With his State of the Union address, President Obama started a national conversation on the subject. It's very important to remember all of what he said, and I'll quote, "We can't just keep subsidizing skyrocketing tuition. We'll run out of money. States also need to do their part by making higher education a higher priority in their budgets. And colleges and universities have to do their part by working to keep costs down. We will do our part, but remember those words, states also need to do their part." My hope is that the state of Minnesota will engage us in the important work we do at a level that minimizes or eliminates tuition increases. But it's not enough to work for or simply hope that the state will invest in its future with us. We must chart our own future. We must reduce costs, eliminate course and program duplication, improve learning outcomes, and be efficient and effective in all that we do. We must achieve excellence in our operations. Operational excellence isn't a buzzword or a project or an initiative. Think of it as a long-term commitment to work smarter, reduce costs, enhance services, and generate new sources of revenue. It, too, is about balancing competing interests and goals. It's about innovation and operating differently, not simply about cutting costs. It is about fundamentally changing the culture of this university and how we manage change. Culture change is not easy, and it's not fast. But we absolutely have to move to a more nimble and responsive way of doing our administrative work, and we have to do it at a lower cost. It's about increasing our effectiveness even as we become more efficient. When I started, those long 8 months ago, I committed myself to reimagining how we operate and function. A group of senior leaders has been meeting since September, and we've added a staff work group to help drive innovation and change. In December, a first round of listening sessions was held with diverse faculty and staff from across the institution. And 4 main themes emerged from those listening sessions. First, we are too risk-averse and too regulatory, more mired in saying no than in finding ways to say yes. Second, we could do more to unleash entrepreneurialism and innovation. Third, we can improve our change management and problem-solving skills. And lastly, consultation is important, but we can overdo it. I've charged each senior leader to implement a risk recalibration initiative in their respective area. This work is aimed squarely at addressing the university's risk-averse culture by eliminating unnecessary or redundant policies and procedures. The Office of Vice President for Research has already begun this work and streamlined procedures in several areas, ranging from technology transfer to grant administration to compliance. One example is our first in the nation Minnesota Innovation Partnerships, or MIN-IP. It will more swiftly and thoughtfully move our university discoveries and intellectual property from our laboratory into the marketplace by cutting out unnecessary negotiations. There are a myriad of other changes that we will introduce as quickly as possible with the goal of reducing workloads and getting bureaucracy out of the way. We have to do this because we need to eliminate ESP in our organization. ESP stands for extremely stupid procedures. We have them, and we need to eliminate them. We have to work harder and work smarter. Here's an example of a change that makes some sense. When we purchase equipment, it's been our policy to capitalize anything valued at $2,500 or more. When you capitalize something, you get the financial value of depreciation, but it also means you have to track and inventory that piece of equipment. Right now, we track 69,000 items every year. So, with the leadership of the OpEx team, we've decided to increase the equipment capitalization threshold from $2,500 to $5,000, consistent with the peer institution, and it will reduce the number of items we count by 31%. That means more than 20,000 things will no longer have to be inventoried and tracked. Hundreds and hundreds of people hours can be reallocated to higher and better uses. That's one good example and a good balance of risk and reward. We've begun another important activity that may affect many of you. It concerns our academic centers and institutes. I was surprised to find out, and you may be surprised too, that we have 265 academic centers and institutes, and they have budgets totaling more than $200 million annually. I've directed all of our deans to look at and examine the mission, centrality, value, and scope of each of these centers and institutes. Administrative centers will also be examined. We may find that some, and maybe even most, remain valuable and relevant, but I'm willing to bet others are not. Excellence also means aligning our strategies with economic realities. That's another component of balancing change. For example, given the uncertain economic environment for residential development, the Umore Park LLC board decided that we're going to focus in the near term on economic development activities that will add value to the property. While we remain committed to the long-term goals of the project, we will use this time to further develop a plan to mitigate the impacts of gravel mining and other development activities on faculty who use Umore space for their research. It's important to note, everyone has a role in identifying and implementing new ways to work smarter, to reduce costs, to enhance services, and to generate revenues. Local solutions are as important as system-wide initiatives, and we must get better at bringing those forward and scaling those that work. I want to re-envision the fundamental role of an administration from one of enforcer to one of partner and facilitator, so that we can help units across the institution rethink how they work what they do, and how we solve shared problems together. Let me now turn to some new initiatives, and I'll start with our educational mission. I'm asking today for faculty, staff, and governance to engage with me in two ways. First, I want all of our campuses to be leaders in the state and nationally in using technology to improve teaching and learning. Our colleagues in Rochester and Crookston may have a head start, but I am establishing a process to request proposals from all of our faculty for innovative educational initiatives that will advance teaching and learning. I want our best thoughts about how to use modern tools to enable student success. I want to pilot those ideas, adopt what works, and spread it across our campuses. I would like to see us have a special focus on electronic textbooks, for example, as a way to reduce costs to students. And I've asked Senior Vice Presidents Hanson and Jones to lead this effort. Second, I will engage with you to define and bring to life a remarkably revised academic calendar. Specifically, building on the report from the 2011 Summer Semester Committee, I would like to take a serious and rigorous look at moving to a year-round academic calendar. This would include 3 14 or 15-week periods that, with sincere apologies to my English faculty, I'm going to call semesters, even though there are 3 of them. I have learned in Minnesota that there are 2 immovable calendar events, however. The religious holidays in December and the secular 10-day celebration that is the Minnesota State Fair. Working around them, I do believe a full 3-semester calendar can be created, and it offers great opportunities for both students and faculty. My vision for a year-round calendar also would incorporate an extended winter session in January. Now, I think there are significant advantages to doing this and making it work. First, it would give students a real chance, more students, a real chance of graduating in less than 4 years. On such a calendar, a full-time, year-round student could earn a 120-credit degree in less than 3 years. Second, a longer winter session would give opportunity for students to study abroad, have meaningful internship or service learning experiences, or complete an honors or significant research project during that time. Third, and very importantly, a year-round schedule increases use of our laboratory and classroom space. Using our facilities year-round reduces bottlenecks and could reduce our long-term need and cost for new facilities. Finally, 3 full semesters would increase tuition revenues annually, allowing us to hire more faculty. Faculty would still teach 2 semesters a year, but could have flexibility to arrange them so that 2 consecutive semesters could be devoted to research in a given year. Alternatively, B or 9-month faculty might choose to teach 3 semesters from time to time for additional compensation. As in all ideas, there are challenges. Chief among them here is managing the financial aid for our students. There are also valuable programs on our campuses in the summer that would have to be accommodated, and we need a transition time to move to a new model. But all in all, in the balance, I think benefits could outweigh the challenges, and this is an idea well worth moving forward. We'll start this conversation on the Twin Cities campus, and other campuses can join as they wish. Let's turn now to our research mission. Remember, we are the state's only public research university, and I have 3 initiatives to move forward. The first is consistent with my hope that this institution and its faculty will become more entrepreneurial in every sense of that word. To enable faculty to develop and learn outside the academy, we are advancing through governance a process for tenured and tenure-track faculty to take what we're calling an entrepreneurial leave. That leave, at 0% salary but full benefits, would allow faculty to work full-time with industry, startups, or NGOs to develop ideas or products in the marketplace. Basically, if you have a commercial, artistic, or creative idea you'd like to explore, we will hold your place here. On its surface, this looks like an opportunity mainly for those in medicine, science, or engineering. But in fact, it offers an opportunity for every faculty member who wants to engage the commercial or nonprofit sectors. Second, to support and enable our researchers to succeed in a highly competitive environment, we need to develop and maintain leading-edge research infrastructure, including our libraries. To accomplish this, I'm establishing a formal recurring research infrastructure funding pool. While our capital planning for building projects is robust, we engage stakeholders across the system to develop our 6-year capital plan. We do not have a similar structure for our research infrastructure. We need one. I'm asking the Vice President for Research to develop a collaborative process for regularly assessing and identifying high-priority research investment needs, and I'm asking the Chief Financial Officer to establish a reliable budget line in the university's annual budget. We must budget at a level that ensures appropriate investment supporting research across all disciplines at the university. Finally, let me address our Academic Health Center. We are confident that our partnership with Fairview will deepen and that together we will bring additional revenues to the AHC. The external review that I announced in January is being staffed and will take place as soon as possible within the constraints of the reviewers' schedules. I firmly believe that a great academic health center is central to the strength and global reputation of our university. The third part of our mission is outreach and engagement. By this time, you have probably heard my commitment to partner with key stakeholders to reduce the achievement gap in Minnesota. That is, those gaps in school performance between students of color and white students, and between students from low-income families and their middle and upper-income classmates. To remain competitive economically and socially, Minnesota must find ways to improve the academic and life course accomplishments of all of our citizens. This is not a simple task, and it's not a task that any single social institution, families, schools, business, communities, nonprofits, or government can do alone. But driven by our three-part mission of teaching, research, and community engagement, bringing research and expertise to bear on significantly reducing the achievement gap is an important responsibility for this university. After all, we are the state's most powerful research engine, our engine of discovery and innovation, and the best choice as the state's chief convener on pressing issues. I plan to devote my time to help lead this effort, and this spring I will host a mini-summit to bring together our faculty experts to ensure that their efforts across all our communities and campuses are coordinated. We at the U must continue to strengthen the diverse human capital across our state. Before closing, let me discuss with you a pressing issue that must concern us all. And that is the need to balance training for a job with being educated for life. The strength of American higher education, which is still the envy of the world, is its core of the liberal arts. When I go to the legislature or to an ag leaders breakfast or a Rotary Club luncheon, I always talk about our role as the state's only public research university. I talk about our deep and wide economic impact. But employers continually and loudly tell me that many of those jobs demand the skills of the liberal arts and the humanities. Writing, communicating, critical thinking and analysis, working at teams, wrestling with and solving problems. This university is about much more than training a workforce for today, although we do a very good job at that. It is about creating the ideas and innovations, the thinkers and leaders, and the economy and the culture that will ensure our success for tomorrow, for the day after that, and the day after that. Let me close now by taking you back 150 years, back to 1862. We were in the midst of the Civil War. It was also the year that 38 Indian men were wrongly hanged in Minnesota, a stain on our state's history. Amid those dark times, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Morrill Act. Senator Justin Morrill of Vermont authored the act promoting agricultural research, the mechanical arts, and access to higher education for all. We will be celebrating the sesquicentennial of the act all year through our Land Grant 150 series, and I would encourage you to take part in those events. But we have someone here today who can really and truly relate to the Morrill Act. He is a graduate of UMD and is now a master's student in our College of Design on the Twin Cities campus. His name is Prescott Morrill, and believe it or not, he is the great-grandnephew of Senator Morrill. Prescott, would you please stand so we can applaud you and your forward-looking uncle? Thanks. So with this special and direct connection, we can move forward the next 150 years of our land grant mission, balancing the prosperity of the state with the economy of the flat and connected world in which we live. We move forward in a world where human suffering and hunger are far too common, where the rule of law is lacking, and where intolerance and prejudice still thrive. We move forward as one of the few institutions in the world with the scope, span of skills, and the talent needed to make the changes this world requires. That should be our calling for the future. Because from public health to agriculture, from engineering to law, from philosophy to medicine, our great university has the ability to attack and solve the challenges facing Minnesota, the nation, and the world. And in that future, I see no counterbalance. I see no other side to weigh. As an efficient, effective, and engaged institution, this university will continue to change the world. Thank you.
We do have an opportunity at this point for the President to entertain questions. If you do have a question, I would ask you to move to one of the microphones in the room, identify yourself and any affiliation you'd like to offer, and ask your question. I'll proceed in the Twin Cities at these two microphones for the first two, and then I'll name the disembodied voices coming from other coordinate campuses to give them an opportunity as well. All right, we'll reward speed first.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Shannon Nicholson. I'm an undergrad here. I have two questions for you. The first one is, I'm wondering how your $150,000 salary increase from President Bruning's exit salary is consistent with your goal of holding the line on administrative costs. Second, I'm wondering when you will hold the line on tuition costs since tuition has gone up every year in the past 100 years, regardless of whether or not the state is giving us more money. That doesn't seem to be the defining, the definition of why tuition goes up. Thanks.
So my salary is set by the Board of Regents. My total compensation, salary plus deferred comp, is only very slightly larger than President Bruning's received in his last year. And my salary is consistent with the salaries of presidents of similar institutions across the country. The issue of tuition is a serious question and one that we work on all the time. As I said, I've been here 8 months, and the tuition increase for next year is as small as it's been in 13 years. That's moving in the right direction. We need to do 3 things to bring tuition under control. We need to address the balance with the state, which we're working on very hard. We need to become more efficient and effective so the costs that go into administration or outside the classroom are taken back and put to benefit students. And third, we work on philanthropy because financial aid can help students who struggle with those tuition payments. So I would claim we are headed in the right direction, and my goal is to get those increases to be as small as possible or zero. Can't do it instantly, but I think we're on the right track.
Please.
Eva Fondasso, Department of Classical and Near Eastern Studies. As a faculty member, I'm very happy to hear you speak of the need for balance between training for a job and liberal education. I'm not quite so thrilled with the idea of a year-round calendar with 3 semesters running, inasmuch as you articulate the reason being principally speed up of production of degrees. This gets to one of my core concerns, and that I believe is shared with by many other faculty and students, which is the intense focus on metrics like graduation rates and time to degree and achievement of a certain number of credits. If the metrics are the goal, then everybody acts so as to hit those numerical targets regardless of what substance they represent. So you get 120 credits, you get a BA no matter what you did or did not learn. And this is a system that doesn't readily tolerate failure or error or experimentation. One must, of course, err in order to learn, and in a sense, one must fail in order to succeed. True education, as well as good research, therefore has to accommodate the options of error and failure as acceptable options, but the present structure of accountability accommodates only success narrowly defined in terms of grades, scores, credits, and credentials. So my question to you, as I know you share some of the values I've pointed to, is how will your administration make more room in the present system for true education instead of mere credentialing?
Well, I have to admit, I'm tempted to give the following answer, and so I will. The faculty own the curriculum. What goes on in those 120 credits is up to you. I think there are places where we do a tremendous amount of education and that there is real intellectual progress as our students move through. But I bet in others there aren't. And so I would applaud your engagement with faculty colleagues to think about what goes into that undergraduate degree. Now, I will say in our world, unfortunately, if we don't define some metrics and measure some outputs, somebody else will do that for us. So there is a measure of accountability in the real political world in which we live that holds, I think, a boundary. But inside that boundary, go for it.
I'd like to give Duluth a chance to ask a question. And
no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move counterclockwise, shall we? Crookston.
I have a question, but I'm waiting to hear if other people would like me to ask. No, I'm not going to ask yet. I want to get the okay of some people I'm working with.
Okay. Morris.
None at this moment.
Southwest Research and Outreach Center.
Nothing at this time.
And Rochester.
They're having a good time in Rochester.
Did the refreshments get broken out early in Rochester? All right. In the absence of questions from coordinate campuses, let me go back to this side, please.
So, Naomi, Shaymin, College of Liberal Arts. This, I think, is in a similar spirit to Eva Fondasso's question. That is that a lot of what you said being so inspiring and really important and filled with deep and important principles, and then looking at ways in which things that are done administratively seem to work against accomplishing those goals. And one very major one that a lot of us find enormously frustrating around teaching mission and research in particular is the budget model. Whether it's incentives for managed growth or responsibility-centered management, whatever the current acronym is, the one that puts colleges in competition with each other for tuition dollars and so on and on. With a new administration, dare we have any hope that we might scrap this model, which is profoundly anti-intellectual and stops us from being the well-integrated university that we would like us to be?
This is that's a great question. This is a profoundly decentralized organization, and that decentralization, as you point out, puts barriers in the way of doing things that we would want to do. Am I ready to announce that we're finished with that and we're going to do something else starting tomorrow? No. But I am in conversation with deans and with our finance people pretty steadily asking questions about why, where are the barriers, and how can we make this work better. Having colleges compete for students in duplicating courses, for example, why are we doing that? So stay tuned. We will move to get barriers out of the way because what I've laid out for you is my vision for what this university should be about. And now the hard work of getting all those pieces to work has to continue. So I hear you, and I will engage in getting those barriers out of the way. Whether that means we scrap our decentralized model, I don't think so, but it needs to work better.
Please.
Messing from the School of Mathematics. So I agree with what Ava said and with what Naomi said. You said in response to Ava that the faculty owns the curriculum. It would be far better if the faculty controlled the university rather than having the administration control the university. Last Saturday's, or maybe it was Sunday's, Star Tribune had a lead story about executives leaving the university and the golden parachutes that they received. In today's Star Tribune, there's an excellent column written by a man who works in disability services, pointing out the perversity of throwing away money, if you'll allow me, pissing away money in the way that was done. But perhaps most offensive was the quote from Brunix, "I round it up to $75,000. This was arrogance taken to an extreme. And I would hope that you will move entirely away, ignoring the Mattori fiasco, towards treating the students, the staff, including those who clean the toilets, as well as the administrators are treated."
So I'm a new president, and you should see what I do. President Brunix was within his authority to make arrangements with administrators as they left the university. I expect I will adhere more closely to the policy on that issue. There are times, however, in managing people where you do have to make a settlement in order to move them out. But in other cases, you don't. And I think you should simply watch what I do before you judge how I do it.
Thank you.
I'm going to give Crookston a chance to ask that nascent question if it's better materialized.
Apparently not.
In that case, please.
My name is Shireen Horzak. I'm Chief Steward of AFSCME 3800 Clerical Workers at the University of Minnesota, and I work at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. And I have two questions similar to those of my colleagues. You stated that you can judge, and I'm paraphrasing, that you can judge the vision going forward by the budget. The past administration spent $2.8 million on severance packages for a handful of administrators. $2.8 million is a 2.8% raise for 1,500 clerical workers. And yet, that money, the administration chose to spend on a handful of administrators rather than frontline staff. What is the vision going forward of recognizing the work and contributions of all of the staff at the university rather than the administration? My second question relates to the commitment of the university to a higher education for the working people of the state of Minnesota. And within that, I want to know what the commitment is of the current administration for the Regents Scholarship, which covers frontline staff at the university, and which the last administration made cuts to, limiting our ability to actually get a higher education at the very university we work at. And I am wondering what the current administration's philosophy is on that, and if that will be restored as part of its commitment to a land-grant mission to educate the working people of the state.
So I believe I addressed the issue of what I'm going to do with salaries. We are doing that for all employees. The Senate has advised me of their desire to have a portion of that be an across-the-board level. I have not yet made a final decision of what to recommend to the Board of Regents, but I anticipate that I will do a section of that as a fixed amount across the board, which will be differentially impactful, obviously, to our more lowly paid employees. The Regents' scholarships, actually, I have asked Vice President Brown to brief me on the costs of those, and I will take under advisement the opportunity of restoring at least partially those scholarships. My understanding is that they were reduced from 100% coverage to a fractional coverage, which I think was 75% of tuition. I perhaps have that number wrong. You're nodding, thank you. Could we do something in the middle, or could we develop a scholarship pool to help? I'm open to that conversation.
Joe Constan from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. President Kaler, you talked about a bunch of balances. I didn't hear a lot about the balance between breadth and depth. This university does a lot of things in a lot of places. You've been here, I realize, just 8 months on the job, but do you have thoughts about the trade-offs we have to make between continuing to do as much as we do with less support from the state and making decisions to invest in areas where we can have greater efficiency and impact if we have a greater concentration of excellence?
Yeah, and that, thank you for that question. That will begin to play itself out in the conversations about how we allocate the $21 million that we have for academic investments. And it's 21 million recurring dollars. It's actually a pretty significant investment. In that conversation about using some of that, I think probably unavoidably, to fill gaps that we need for the general health of the institution, but beginning to build spires of those dollars that can take us from good to great, that can leverage private dollars, or that can in fact deliver an important thing for the state, for the people of the state of Minnesota that we're not doing. And so it's in that conversation that we'll begin to push that way. At the graduate level, I think it's very important for us to look carefully at our graduate programs and begin to assess them. Right now, we're beginning in what I think is a fairly clumsy way, which is as much my fault as anybody's, to do that, but I'd expect that kind of introspection to draw focus as we move forward. It is very important that we do what we do well, and if we have things that we're not doing well, you really got to ask yourself why you're doing them, and we'll have that conversation.
So, Carolyn, forgive me, I'm going to ask Duluth again first. Duluth?
None at this time.
Morris?
Yeah, we do have a question.
Yes. President Kaler, my name is Evan Vogel. I'm a big member in our student governance structure. I'm an MSLC representative as well as a student senator, and I've met you a few times, especially for that MSLC luncheon that we had, just to introduce myself a little bit. In your State of the University address, you mentioned that discrimination is a large problem, and I would agree with that. Today, the Student Senate passed a resolution opposing the marriage amendment that will be coming before or I guess the state legislature, and will be on the ballot as a referendum. In the Senate today, this this proposal passed overwhelmingly, 23 in favor, 1 opposed, with 4 abstentions. The Student Senate recognizes that there's multiple sides to this issue, and would just like to say that we're not asking the administration to come in full support and go out and fight the battle of same-sex marriage, but we are asking that they stand behind that commitment to fight discrimination. And I guess I would ask, would you be willing, and would the administration be willing, to say that it's not okay to pass institutionalized discrimination that this marriage amendment could bring about, would you be willing to join the Student Senate in opposition of the marriage amendment?
That's a very good and topical question. This institution clearly is affirming, supporting diversity. Our HR policies provide full benefits. We are completely open as an institution to supporting gay couples. The politics of moving the institutional endorsement for a particular political point of view is a little more complex. I need more conversations with governance across the institution. I need more conversation with the Board of Regents before we insert the university's name into a political battle. So those are conversations I will have. I was made aware of the Senate's action earlier today and discussed how the institution actually makes that statement and whether or not I can have a personal opinion on that as president of the institution. And those are items that we will work out, but I can tell you as an institution we are open and supportive, and it's very difficult in this world where talent is what matters to imagine closing doors to talented individuals because of their sexual orientation.
Carolyn.
So the question, so my name is Caroline Hayes from Mechanical Engineering, and the question I have pertains to quality. So I think that some of this discussion about metrics, I think some of the discomfort that people feel around this issue of metrics is that one thing that's extremely important yet extremely difficult to measure, and I'm not suggesting we try to measure it, is quality and integrity. Yet these are the things that are central to our mission. And quite frankly, quality is what, drives the state. No industries are going to come to us and say, hi, we'd like to come and hire some mediocre graduates. No, they want high-quality graduates who've had a high-quality education. So in these difficult times when everything's being measured, many things are being cut, and perhaps sometimes we lose sight of some things like quality. What can we do to help protect our quality and our integrity? I mean, because as I feel it, without quality, we're lost. Our students are lost, and the future of the state is lost. Thank you.
And the university would be lost. We have to have those discussions at every step we make, whether it's a hiring decision for a faculty member, whether it's a tenure decision for a faculty member, as we recruit students and as we teach and recruit our undergraduate students. And maintaining that focus, even in difficult times, is what separates championship caliber institutions from the others. I think we do that in many important and significant ways, and insisting on that is absolutely essential. And I will never be opposed to a decision that's made on the basis of quality. But part of our story also is and you very well know, is moving the statement you just made out. There was an article in the Chicago Tribune not long ago, which is people want an excellent education, but they don't want to pay for it. And it's a little bit like the 2008 statement of get your government hands off my Medicare. Okay? I mean, this is the tension that we are in. And the pressure there can say, okay, we're going to become a not very good institution, but we're going to be cheap. And that's not my vision for the University of Minnesota.
And I'll go left again in this room.
Jerry Cohen, Department of Horticultural Science. I just wanted to start by saying thanks for a very inspiring speech. That was good. But the one thing that you brought up, and is kind of dear to my heart, is this is my second career, and I started in the federal government. And one of the things I've noticed since getting to the University of Minnesota is that we as an institution, as you discussed, undersell ourselves. And that means underselling ourselves within federal agencies across the nation. And so you talked about that as one thing that you noticed. And so my real interest is, what do you have in mind for changing that? I think we probably are under lobbying in Washington. We're doing a variety of things. I don't know about the state level, but at least at the national level. And so I'd really be interested in how you envision a better sales policy for.
Well, I think that, sure, thank you. I think there are really two elements to that. One is we can do a better job in terms of our university relations and placing stories and doing all the things that we actually do. But part of it is also culture. And, you know, I joke about the Texans because I think it's kind of funny. And the other thing about Minnesotans is that if it's true, it's not bragging. And so culturally, for us all, 4,000 faculty members, to go tell the story about what we're doing and how good we are individually, whether it's at a cocktail party or church, is something we need to have to just get more comfortable doing. And I'm trying to lead by example, but it's a cultural issue here that does not work in our favor. And we have tremendous faculty, very underrepresented in the national academies, very underrepresented in health sciences and Howard Hughes medical investigators. We have people who absolutely should be there, but they're not. And so part of it is you know, I moved here from New York, but and I wasn't there very long. But part of it is getting that focus and being a little more aggressive in our messaging, in media and in lobbying. But also, it's okay to tell that story.
So Senate staff has given me the watch tapping move, so I'm going to offer the last question to Professor Beeman.
Bill Beeman, I'm in the anthropology department. Thank you very much for your speech, which I think was very inspiring. I think that what I'd like to pick up on is a couple of themes that have already been undertaken, plus some of your remarks. We talk about balance, and when you first came here, one of your quoted statements that was that the university needed to emphasize STEM disciplines more. As a member of CLA, first of all, with all modesty, there are a number of STEM disciplines in the College of Liberal Arts. They're not just in one college. And the liberal arts and other disciplines that might not be counted as NSF STEM disciplines also form I think the core of what are going to be the important scientific and intellectual discoveries of the future when combined with STEM disciplines. One of the difficulties that we have right now, again, going back to the question of the budget model, it's extremely difficult for us to combine the humanities and social sciences with the more STEM discipline departments here on campus. And the desire is there. We have collaborations between, for instance, the College of CSE and, for instance, the theater department here on campus. Our own department in anthropology has collaboration with the College of Biological Sciences, as well as the College of, as well as the Geology and Engineering, and there are many, many, many other examples. And so I think that it's rather short-sighted to say that we need to emphasize the STEM disciplines alone. It is, I think, extremely important that we emphasize the fact that, yes, maybe there is a future and there's certainly some income to be made through the STEM disciplines, but we're not going to be a strong institution if we try to favor one area of intellectual endeavor over another.
No, that's a very good point, and you shouldn't interpret my comments as meaning that. What I want us to do is have excellence in the things that we do. In the traditional, the NSF STEM disciplines, we right now have employers who want to hire those folks, and we have very qualified students who want to come. So we're going to increase the enrollment there. But as we move into this discussion of the new academic investments, I strongly encourage you to bring that conversation forward. The interdisciplinarity, if that's the right word, I get in trouble with that, I probably is the wrong one. The interdisciplinary nature of the future demands that we get out of our silos and start working with each other. One thing I hear at lunch with faculty regularly are these barriers and these artificial impediments to having smart people work together. We just have got to get rid of those. Now, our provost has been here even a smaller amount of time than I've been, but one thing we've already talked about is driving that, whether it's a budget model fix or whether it's just saying, you know, it's okay if you want to do this, let me help you. We need to get there, absolutely need to get there.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you here in the Twin Cities for attending, those of you in greater Minnesota, those of you somewhere on the internet around the world. No doubt Twitter is all lit up with interesting stuff. And thank you, President Kaler, for the address.
Thank you.